So this is the room that we set up when the kids are going to come do the Manhattan Project theme. So all the equipment that you see in here is drug out and set up ahead of time. So before they've walked into this room, they've already seen a movie on the Manhattan Project, about 17 minutes long. And then I've talked for another 20 minutes about communications issues in World War II, like the type of technology that they had and how they communicated. So in here are some hands-on activities that they're going to do regarding World War II communications. So this is my 1937 Fairbanks Morse radio. Fairbanks Morse now makes diesel engines, but back then they made radios for a few years. This currently has no original radio guts in it. And right now it sounds like static. It sounds like what you would hear on an AM radio during World War II, because this is actually a recording that you're listening to of static from a World War II era broadcast. So it's just playing this in the background until somebody presses one of the white buttons, which I'm going to do here.
There will be a complete blackout tonight at 11 o'clock. That blackout is not only for the city of Seattle, it includes every light between the California border.
Here's the whistle. Merle Saunders comes up. He boots it. It's a long one down to around the 3-yard line. Ward Cup takes it. He's cutting up to his left. He's over the 10. Nice block there by Lehman. Cup still going. He's up to the 25. And now he's hit and hit hard about the 27-yard line. Bruce Kennard made the tackle.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you this important bulletin from the United Press. Flash, Washington. The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Stay tuned to WOR for further developments, which will be...
Say, don't forget, Uncle Sam still needs those used fats. Needs them more than ever for munitions and military medicines. So save every drop. Most meats aren't rationed now, so you can double or even triple your used fat savings.
You can have vegetables, lots of them, on your table next winter. You can have your own fresh vegetables on your table this summer.
So there's 15 broadcasts that correspond to the 15 white buttons that you see on top. So every time you press a button, you get a different broadcast. Now, this is programmable in that when you start it up, I can press one of those buttons to set it into a different mode. So for example, if I've got 6th graders, when I start it up, I'll press a certain button, and all of the programs are things like advertisements and things that younger kids can understand. But if I have high school kids in here, when I start it up, I'll press a different one of these buttons, and that programs a different 15 broadcasts in there. So I can change it depending on the school group. This is serves as volume. This is like a stop button. So they press this, it'll stop the broadcast. What it's actually doing is it just goes back and playing the static that you heard before. So this whole thing is being powered by a media player that I got off of eBay that was a surplus from Disney World. It was taken out of service. And so that's what's doing all this stuff, is that I have that thing programmed. There's a memory card in it with all these broadcasts on it. So this is my activity to play with Morse code. So first of all, I've got these lanterns that are World War II era. This one is a 45. That one in the back there is a 1919. I've put in some animated LED bulbs to kind of set the mood here. This is one of my telegraph stations. And so if I press the telegraph key, okay, that relay moves and makes a click. But also, there's another station over there on that table. So if I press the button, that relay over there clicks, and you can see that light flashes. So what they do with this is they have to play a game of Battleship. So you might remember Battleship. You've got a grid with ships. You have some ships. They have some ships. You don't know where theirs are. They don't know where yours are. And you transmit a letter and a number and see if you hit them or not. The thing is, they have to do it in Morse code. So they have a little Morse code chart, right? And so what they have to do is that key out the letter. And of course, the other team is over there trying to interpret what's happening. And there's a wall between us and them that's not up right now. So if I key in, then they are trying to figure out from their chart what I just keyed. Right now, I've got this separate key. If they get hit, they're supposed to key SOS with this separate key here. And what it does is it flashes a red light. I'm going to change that. I'm going to have another board with buttons on it for hit, miss, or resend. So if they don't understand, they can tell the other team to send their coordinates again. So at this table, they're going to practice a couple things. One, they're going to listen to a coded message over the radio, and then they're going to try to decode it using these, what do we call, our Enigma machines. And this is to simulate the Enigma machine of World War II, where there's 3 gears. Each gear has a number of letters etched into it, and each gear has a number on it as well. And the idea is that you can use this to encode and decode messages, but in order to decode somebody's message, you have to get the gear order correct, and you have to get what's called the initial key correct, meaning you have to line up the letters on these arrows. If you don't do that right, you're not going to interpret the code that you're going to be sent. So, but prior to this, we had talked about in the auditorium about the Enigma machine and a little bit how it works and whatnot. So they've got some background when they come in here. I did not make these, by the way. These are, you can buy these. So what they have is they have this, looks like a little radio, and it is a little radio, but it's also a media player. So there's a little memory card in there, and when they press the button, they're going to hear this message that tries to sound like it's from World War II. And I'm going to be listening with a headphone on here, but I'm going to unplug it. And I'll play so you can kind of hear what it sounds like.
By for encryption instructions. Gear order 60, 70, 50. Initial key Delta, Bravo, Yankee. Stand by for coded transmission. Yankee, uniform, uniform, Romeo, whiskey.
Okay, so it goes on and gives this list of characters. So the way I made that, that's of course my voice. First I recorded myself, then I did some processing on the vocals to make it sound more like it came through a radio. And then the background noise you hear is actually World War II static, like the one you saw in the previous radio I showed. That's mixed in there. And then I also mixed in some Morse code that drifts in and out to try to make it sound as authentic as I could get it. So they listen to all that. It tells them how to set it up. Then they go to the gears once they get their message written down, and they try to enter the message through these gears, and they read the answer off of this one. So letter by letter, they'll decode this message. So we talk about how in World War II there was kind of the first instance of propaganda radio where each side was trying to transmit to the other. And so for the younger kids, I have this little activity where they have to make up their own propaganda radio broadcast, and they try to imagine what they might say to the other side to make them give up or go home or whatever. And so what I've got is this reel-to-reel, and what looks like an old microphone. It's actually not old, but it looks like it. This is not period correct. This is from the 70s, but anything that's too old because of the way the rubber wears, it's really hard to get something reliable from the 40s here. So all they do is they record their message, and there's instructions here on what to do. And if you follow the instructions, they'll record their own message and then play it back and listen to themselves. So the last activity I have right now is I talk about the Navajo code talkers in the auditorium. And some of our kids that we get here, actually, they have Navajo code talkers in their family, as their great-grandfathers or whatever. And so this is an interview that they can watch. There's a bunch of headphones down there they can put on. And this is Peter McDonald. And this goes on for about 10 minutes, and he talks about what it was like to grow up on a reservation and how you had to memorize stories, and then he talks a little bit about what it was like to be a code talker in the war, and he speaks a little bit of the code and gives an example. And then after they watch that, they have a chart here of the Navajo dictionary as the code talkers came up with, plus some other terms, and they're asked some questions about the interview, and then they have to, I give them a little sentence that they have to code into the Navajo code, so they have to try to do it themselves.